Welcome to the Philosophy, Science, and Religion podcast. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with George Ortega, Mitch J, Jamie Soden, and wsdtime.
Oh yeah!
Oh yeah! Okay, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about, how do you keep going on doing your activism about something that you care about greatly without getting all frustrated, angry, and depressed and just wanting to give up. That's kind of a basic way of saying it, because a few weeks ago I was experiencing some real burnout at all the suffering in the world. And so George suggested that we talk about, how to not let it get to us. So George, do you have tips for this? Like, how do we keep stuff from getting to us and losing our cool?
I do have tips, but I think it might be best if we let one of us introduce something that upsets us. Jamie, you were talking before about, the conservatives who don't understand the need for Social Security, whatever. So let's pick something, about people or about the world that really frustrates us, makes us angry, sad, and then we can explore how to not let it get to us.
Yeah.
How do I start this? I suppose WSD could lead off, because he knows he has some understanding about this as well. It happens more in his country than mine, I think. So
How people get screwed out of their Social Security? Well, they're trying to cut off Social Security, so they can put more money in their pockets, basically. And
all right, let's start out. So, these conservatives, they either don't understand or they don't care, right?
Oh, I'm gonna say don't care.
Okay, all right. Now, the first thing I think we need to realize is something we all already understand is it's not really about them. I mean, they don't have a free will. Reality, nature, whatever you want to call it, causality, is making them not care, right? So sometimes we have a tendency to direct our anger and frustration at them and just how could they, where, I guess from a naturalistic perspective, maybe how could the universe, have people act like that? But can you see how it makes it a bit better if we're not directing our anger toward them?
Somewhat. Yeah, but like I said, for me, I have a short fuse. That would be hard. Still be hard for me. That's something that's going to take time with me.
I mean, I've very limited patience for those sort of people as well, George Ortega. Well, let me give you an example, right? When I see their comments, when I see far-right conservatives say that we should abolish Social Security and minimum wage and stuff like that, regardless of how bad that would turn out for the poor, right? They don't seem to give a damn, right? It really frustrates me to no end. I see examples in countries that don't have Social Security and stuff like that, and there are kids and mentally ill people and stuff like that starving to death, right? Because selfish people don't provide a safety net for these people, and I don't have a lot of tolerance for conservatives right now, man, because
all right,
they are
I know, but Jamie, what our work for the last several years has been about trying to get people to understand that nobody has a free will, in an effort to kind of bring more civility into the world, in an effort to for us to be able to accept them, for us to be able to accept ourselves more, so that now I think what you're saying is that we're still in the early stages of this, where very few people are on our side, very few people understand this. So it may take several decades before we understand it, the world understands it enough to be able to put it into play as much as we want to when we want to. But just I just wanted to start with the point that that's something we can get better at. If we remind ourselves, all right, wait a minute. This person is just so callous, so cruel, so indifferent. But it's as if they have a disease. It's a disease that is afflicting them. That's causing them to afflict others. I get what you're saying,
George, but they come out with these absurd statements and claims. They say that the government can't afford to provide for these people, or they claim that.
All right, so then let's get to the next thing. Jamie, how does that make you feel when they say stuff like that?
It just makes me angry, right? And I know for a fact that there's enough resources to help the poor, right, the needy, the generally vulnerable people like kids and that, there is enough to fund education and healthcare and stuff like that. They can't tell me different, right?
All
Because
right, but
if they can't
I hear
afford
you.
that, right?
So in other words,
why
you
do they
know there's
spend
an answer to it.
listen,
I hear you.
listen,
You know there's an answer.
listen,
They don't
George,
understand it.
George,
But let's stay with your emotional reaction. You become angry, okay? That's what, in other words, to the extent that, like, you could listen to them, not get it, not understand it, not care, and you are not becoming angry, I think that would help you, I think, to maybe be able to dialogue with them better, to be able to, like, ultimately get them to understand. But it's more so.
When I see some of their statements, it just comes off as bigoted, man. You know what I mean?
No, I know. All right, so then the first,
don't understand,
Jamie, the first question,
don't understand the suffering that their ideology causes. They want to cut all these vital services that people rely on, right?
I understand, and Jamie, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want each of us to answer it, to see how we respond to this question.
Hey, Jordan, I think we better let Jamie finish his rant.
Let Jamie finish, please.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I was about to say, right, they can't tell me that we don't have enough resources or money to fund these services that people need, right? To create public jobs and to create social security for the disabled and elderly, right? When they spend so much money on bombing other countries and killing innocent civilians, I might add, right? Why are they spending so much on war but not enough on healthcare? You know what I mean? That really angers me, man. You know what I mean? When I see so conservatives try and justify that and then claim that we don't understand basic economics when we say, oh, we should be funding these things and not war, you know?
All right, so Jamie, and I think we're all on your side. I think we all, understand.
Yeah, I know you're on my side, but it really, I'm just saying how much it frustrates me when I see libertarians who say that we should just get rid of government. All
right, but Jamie, this podcast.
Yeah.
This podcast is about, like, how you can perhaps not become as frustrated, both for your benefit and for the benefit of your activist work. So the question I want to ask you, and then the rest of you guys can, give your answers also, is, Jamie, is it necessary for you to become angry and frustrated?
Well, I don't know what else to do, man. You know what I mean? Because they don't seem to be learning. They don't seem to be progressing, man. How are we going to tell conservatives, right, that what they're doing to the most vulnerable people is cruel and unfair, right, when it's avoidable? How are we going to tell them any different? They don't seem to be taking it.
I understand that. And so let's say they don't get it now. They may not ever get it. But is it necessary, because they don't get it and they may not ever get it, for us to become angry and frustrated?
Well, it's a reaction you get to when you feel like there's nothing else you can do, George. That's just the bottom line there. And
All
I
right,
think
how about
relates to
Chandler, what's your take? Is it necessary for us to get angry and frustrated?
Well, I would say it's not that it's necessary for us to do it, but what I think is that anger is often a motivation for us to want to do something. But for example, in this case, when you don't know what it is you can do, then it makes no sense to get angry about it because it won't help you in any way.
Okay, good answer. Mitch?
Hello? Mitch?
Yeah, I'm here. I agree. That's not very productive. That won't solve the problem, getting angry.
Right, but the more directly, and because we're going to get to that, but right now, is it necessary for us to become angry?
Necessary? What do you mean?
I think anger, if it's focused correctly, maybe.
Well, I mean, we live in a world of cause and effect. I mean, we can't control how information affects us. We may become angered, we may not be.
Right. In other words, like, in the present moment, we can't, right? But can you see how, like, let's say we started to make an effort to just not go there, to not allow ourselves to lose our happiness, to lose our sense of well-being by becoming angry. Do you see that, like, we could, like, listen to them saying what they're saying and completely disagree with them and try to advocate for our cause without the necessity of perhaps not right now, but eventually not becoming angry, at the situation, at what they say.
Are you guys familiar with street epistemology? That YouTube channel?
I've heard of it.
No idea.
So the idea is to talk to people on the street about what they believe in and why they believe it, and try to be really, really calm and rational and approachable and see where that leads. And if you look at the videos there, you'll see a lot of progress there. When people are engaged who might have conservative beliefs or religious beliefs, and when they're challenged, but in a comfortable environment, instead of just being attacked or shouted at in an angry fashion, progress can be made. So
all right.
I think that's kind of relevant to...
Absolutely, Mitch. All right, so let's, in principle, I think we're kind of understanding that we've been conditioned by our past, by our society, by our culture to become angry and frustrated, because that's what we've been taught. But I think we're understanding that it doesn't have to be that way. Those people in the videos, Mitch, that you just cited probably are not allowing themselves to become angry when they interact with those people. They're remaining calm. They're maintaining their peace of mind.
The thing. Something like that, I can see taking years. Like I said, they might be calm individuals, such as unlike me, which like I said, if you say something stupid, say something nonsensical, I would kind of get animated by it. But yeah.
All right, so
I feel like you need to work on.
But WSD, let's focus on this relative to the causes we're working toward, because we care about what we're working on, and we want it to work. We want to be effective. So the second question, and it's kind of answered by what Mitch said about these videos, is it helpful when we become angry and frustrated? And Chandler, you said that it can be helpful, I think, maybe initially, because this anger kind of moves us to want to do something about it, right? But let's say we've had the emotion of anger, right? We know we need to do something. After we've had that emotion for hopefully a brief time, is it necessary for us to continue to feel? No. Is it helpful for us to maintain that angry, frustrated state of mind?
Yeah, I really don't think it is.
But the thing is, Chandler, we can't help our reactions when we see results that are not in our favor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know, and that's an important thing too, because on one hand, we can recognize that emotion may not be helpful, but we can't help that we feel it.
Right. So, Mitch, explain why you think the people in the video you were citing were able to do you think that they were at one time angry and they overcame that tendency to stay angry, or do you think that maybe they just weren't angry to begin with?
Well, to be clear, there's this guy, I think his name is Anthony Magnabosco, and he approaches people on the street. Let's say there's some Jehovah's Witnesses giving pamphlets, and he will try to single out one of them and engage them in a peaceful conversation, using certain principles to figure out why they believe in what they believe and whether this is a reliable way of believing in things, So this is one individual that I'm referring to who is making a conscious effort to be fair and approachable in order to create change. And he wants other people to follow in that line. I think there's even an app, like a street epistemology app, because basically he wants rational people, philosophers, liberals, atheists, these kinds of people, to do exactly what you're suggesting, to prophylactically make steps so they don't get angered, so their message can go through, so they can make positive changes.
Right. Okay. So it's the idea that it's not that it's easy. It's not going to be easy for these conservatives, for these Republicans, to let go of ways they've been for decades and that their parents have been for decades, whether it's about the environment or other beliefs. It's not going to be easy for them to change, and it's not going to be easy for us to change, right? But I think we're kind of understanding that it is possible, and so So it's not really necessary. We can work to become less angry and less frustrated. Now, the third question, so it's not helpful. I think we understand how, it's generally not helpful. The third question is it moral? I mean, is it good that we become angry and frustrated?
Well, I mean, it's only good if it leads us to do something positive. But if we can't do anything, then the emotion itself, I don't know if we can say it's good or bad.
Well, war and riots, that's not going to lead to good outcomes, because all that's going to do is get innocent people hurt and stuff. And I don't want it to get to that point, Chandler. But the fact is, if the Conservatives keep on cutting, things that people need, like the police, roads, firefighters and whatnot, if they keep doing these things, then the inevitable result is a violent revolution. Sorry,
yeah.
but that's what history has shown. If people are denied the resources that they need to survive, George, then they will fight back for it.
Well, Jamie, I agree with you. If things got that bad, then I think violent revolution might be the best answer. But let's keep it at our activism.
I know, but look at Greece. I mean, Greece has so many problems because of a recession that happened over there, and a lot of it's being caused by the conservative, government cutting their services, man.
Right. I think that what I'm trying to get at here is let's say we're with our friends or our family or acquaintances, and for whatever reason, it's not up to them, it's not up to us. We're disagreeing. They're disagreeing with us. We're disagreeing with them. Can we see that it's really not moral for them to start becoming angry with us and or even for them to become angry or for us to become angry? It seems like that kind of anger is kind of not a very moral emotion, that we would be more virtuous by maintaining our peace of mind.
I just don't know what to do at this point, you know what I mean? Because the Republican government in USA has not led to good outcomes. The Conservatives in the UK has not led to good outcomes. I just don't know what else to do. They don't take climate change seriously enough. They don't take poverty seriously enough. What are we supposed to do, George?
I hear you. And so, let me just ask one last question, and then we'll delve with that, because that is, we have to explore that in great detail. What can we do? So, the last question is, doesn't it usually make matters worse when we become angry and frustrated? When we become angry and frustrated, and we're addressing somebody on the internet, either through a text or whatever, and then, they become angry, doesn't that lead to a breakdown in communication, and often, doesn't allow them to hear us and us to hear them?
I don't know what to say, to be honest. I mean, as far as politics is concerned, all they are interested in at the moment, the right wing, right, is burdening people with a debt that most of us didn't even create. It was them who did it through unnecessary wars and corporate welfare and stuff like that, giving tax breaks to the rich and also giving them money that they didn't earn on their own.
Right. So Jamie, let's somehow, does it seem right to you that, let's say you're the more virtuous of these people that you're interacting with, they don't get it. Does it seem right to you that they should be happier than you? That if you're expressing more compassion, more concern, more responsibility, doesn't it seem a bit wrong that they're the happy ones and you're the one who's all frustrated and unhappy?
I get that point, George, but I just don't know what to do, and neither does WSD. I mean,
right. Let's explore that. Chandler, Mitch, what do you think the answer is here?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what the answer is here, but I know how Jamie and WSD feel about a lot of these issues.
I mean, if we don't sort out climate change, then there's going to be a very big immigration crisis coming our way, as pointed out by Kyle from Secular Talk, if you heard his videos. because certain parts of the world will become uninhabitable, George, as you will know. You know
No,
what I mean?
I'm fully on board. I'm completely
Yeah.
on your side. I hear you.
Yeah.
Mitch,
Yeah.
what do you think the answer is?
I think, again, we can't control how information affects us. So if we get angry, we get angry. Now, is that ideal? I think it's not ideal to be overwhelmed by anger and to be so angry that you can't focus on problem solving. I think it's all about problem solving. If there's a problem and it angers you because you care a lot about the problem, some of that anger is passion, it's motivation. And other parts of that anger are actually stopping you from solving the problem. It's preventing you from being focused, preventing you from functioning. You know, sometimes it's sort of like a coping mechanism. It's therapeutic. People who feel they can't solve the problem instead resort to just being angry and complaining and yelling. That's not very helpful. So a small portion of that anger, that sort of righteous anger that motivates people, is helpful. But the rest of it has to go. What has to happen is we have to logically, rationally, reasonably, with a clear head, we have to solve these problems that we care about. We can't be lost in these clouds of anger, or nothing will ever get done.
All right. So now, like, I think as activists, we are demanding a lot from the people who don't care. The people who don't care don't understand. We're really demanding a lot. We're demanding that they, shift their positions dramatically. As wrong as we believe they are, and as wrong as I believe they actually are, can you understand the scope of the change that we're asking them to make, and how hard it's going to be for them to make it? So, given that, perhaps maybe we can see that, like, well, if we're demanding that of them, maybe for the sake of the effectiveness of our work and for the sake of our own well-being, maybe we should be demanding as much of ourselves. If we expect them to become more caring, more responsible, less callous, then we can expect ourselves to rise above the anger and the frustration and the sadness and all, and maintain, and go about our activism feeling good about, even though we're not going to be feeling good about the state of the world, but we're going to be feeling good nonetheless, because we understand that our sadness and our frustration and anger, isn't necessary or helpful or moral in general.
Well, it's as I said before, George. Me and WSD just don't know what to do at this point. I wished I had an answer, but right now, me, Chandler, and WSD.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jamie. Because sometimes I believe the way I was conditioned, I think maybe the way a lot of us were conditioned by this culture is that, like, if something's wrong and I don't get angry about it, it's almost like as if I'm saying that I don't care. I think sometimes we're taught that way. So, like, do you feel like that? Do you feel like that, like, if you stopped becoming angry, that, that would mean that you've stopped caring?
No, it wouldn't mean I stopped caring. However, if I stopped getting angry about it, I mean, what would that change? I mean, it would be good for my health, I suppose, but it wouldn't change anything for the rest of
somebody else try to answer Jamie's question. If Jamie, let's say, was able to succeed over the next weeks or months in, like, overcoming his anger toward the conservatives, toward these people, what would change in his manner of activism? How would his activism change?
Only thing I think of is he'll be less stressed.
You'll be more successful
Um,
in solving the problems that you want to solve.
Explain that, Mitch.
Well, it's the same thing I said before. A certain amount of anger can motivate you, but too much of it prevents you from solving the problem. Instead, you just become entrenched in that emotion instead. And that's not the goal. The goal is always to solve the problem, So it's not helping. But if you didn't have that anger and that anxiety, right, or at least to that extent, you would be more focused on trying to solve the problem. I'll give you an example. Okay, recently, I went to a protest. This is an animal cruelty protest.
Yeah.
I didn't just get angry and go, "There's nothing we can do." There was a protest, so I went to the protest. And the group I was protesting with, they've been very successful. In America, there's something called the Humane Slaughter Act, and chickens, infamously, are missing from it. So it's up to the individual corporations to decide whether or not they want to be humane to chickens, like incapacitate them, for example, before they kill them.
Yeah.
Many corporations just care about the profit, and they haven't made these considerations, which is actually understandable given the fact that they might not really understand veganism or carnism or any of these things, because most people don't.
Yeah.
So when
All
this
they
group,
understand is money.
yeah, well, they don't get it, but when this group brings to their attention, usually they go, "Oh yeah, I get it. The least I can do is incapacitate them before I kill them." So this group demonstrates, and they've been very successful at convincing people to, like, hey, it's bad enough you're killing chickens, at least you can try to slaughter them more humanely. Now, if I was just in a cloud of anger, I wouldn't be part of the protest. I wouldn't be part of that group that's helping make these kinds of changes. You see? So it's like I have some anger, but it's placed in the right direction. It's a righteous sort of anger, you know?
Right. So it's the kind of anger that makes you want to do something about it, but you don't want to kind of like sustain that anger when you're actually talking with people.
Exactly.
Like if you sustain it day to day, what happens?
Yeah, obviously that would not be. So for example, during the protests, the management weren't too happy, but they were civil, you know? Like they didn't want us in a certain part of the sidewalk. They moved us to another portion. Several people, the building manager and the store manager both took a look at what was happening, realized we were in our legal right to be there. And when we were done, I said goodbye, and they said goodbye. It was very civil. And if I were angry, might have gotten arrested. The protest might have backfired. So I was able to be really
but
cool.
I'm going to ask you something.
Yeah.
What if the protest still backfired?
Oh, so like...
What if it protests despite you being calm? What if it still backfired?
Well, I don't know the future, but I'm saying this is the ideal, right? I mean, who knows what will happen? Again, we don't control how information affects us. It's possible that if all this activism that I'm involved in failed, or if it didn't meet my expectations, that I would become angered. But that's not the point. The point is, what's the goal? What's the ideal? I don't know. Maybe I'd become angry, but then I don't think that would be helpful. It wouldn't be beneficial.
Right. And Jamie, that's the point. In other words, like part of being an effective activist, in other words, part of the problem is that they don't care. But another part of the problem that we have to acknowledge is that we get too angry and frustrated to the point that they can't hear us because of our anger and frustration.
Yeah, I get that point. But the thing is, like I said, emotions, it's just one of those things that it's a reaction, when you're out of ideas, when you don't know what to do and you don't have any answers anymore, and the world isn't going the way you think it should go, that's when the frustration comes in. Like, I did try to vote in a more liberal kind of government in this election. Like, I voted for Labour, Jeremy Corbyn, and that was my first vote, by the way. But the thing is, I did that because I couldn't just let the Conservatives cut our National Health Service to the point of oblivion. They obviously don't care about the amount of elderly and sick people who would perish without that healthcare system, and the nurses and the doctors that will lose their jobs in the process. This is going to cause some serious problems, George. I can't just sit here and let that go. You know what I mean?
No.
I can't just sit here and let that vanish.
I agree with you. So let's move. So I think we kind of like agree on the basic philosophy, that, you know, it would help our cause and help us feel better, help us to suffer less, to overcome this anger and frustration. Let's work on techniques. Jamie, I'm guessing that a lot of your activism isn't in real time, that basically somebody writes something and you get it, you know, in a message board or something, and then you're going to respond to them in somehow, and, you know, at some time in some manner, right? So let's explore. Chandler, how do you think Jamie could work on his overcoming anger and frustration within these text chats, these text debates that happen online, you know, where he's engaging the conservatives?
Well, for one thing, I've often told Jamie it might be better if he didn't even try to get on Twitter and argue with these people. Because I don't know how much difference it does make. All I know is that it's bad for his health that he gets so frustrated with them.
Yeah, and to think that we share a planet with so many of these people, I mean, it's disgraceful. Like, right, I know violence ain't gonna solve anything, George, right? And I'm not even asking for a war to happen. But if they don't stop with these ridiculous claims and this ridiculous mindset and defending the conservatives in their cuts to vital services, man, then the inevitable result is a violent revolution. I don't want it to happen, but that's the way it's going to go if it continues. We can't just continue with this decline, George. It has to be stopped.
I hear you, but let's keep our focus in the present. Mitch, WSD, like Jamie has just heard from somebody that, well, you know, social Darwinism is the most natural system, and like if we cut healthcare, then the fittest will survive. It's going to serve an evolutionary aim and all, and it's a callous, you know, compassionless, you know, viewpoint. But so how should Jamie respond to that kind of like indifference in a way that's going to help him not become angry and frustrated?
Will, you want to take this, or?
I'm the worst person to try to help somebody calm down.
Well,
I'm angry myself. I'm not trying to come. I'm trying to make me a hypocrite. I feel like,
I personally, you know, it's a little bit hard for me to give advice too, because I'm a different kind of person. You know, basically, there are people that I consider to be persons of interest, people who are important or people who I'm interested in speaking with, people who have power or are notable in some kind of way, and other people who don't have much of an impact. For example, when we talk about free will, I'm not very interested in arguing against libertarian free will believers because they're such a minority. That's the main reason. It's just not. They're not really a priority to me.
I know, but libertarians are the same kind of ignorant people who say we should either shrink government to the point of
No, not those libertarians. Libertarian free will believers, people who believe that determinism.
Believe in free will, dude. They do blame people and stuff.
I just want to make it clear though. It's the same. These are two different ways of using the same word, completely distinct, right? There's the libertarian, the political one, and there's a libertarian in terms of philosophy.
Yes.
In terms of free will belief, I'm referring to people who believe that they think that people have a free will, right? And sorry, I'm a little bit
Yeah, well, but they believe that therefore determinism is false because we have free will. And
exactly.
so everything's like uncaused decisions or something silly.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't tend to make much of a distinction between the two because a lot of libertarian political types, they tend to blame the poor a lot. That's the thing. So I don't really see much of a difference there.
Again, but there's not much of a. But I don't want to make it. But you're making again. I don't want to make it seem like there's a similarity, just a coincidence. Or a little more than a coincidence, but this is not the same thing. So yeah, Chandler, thank you. I got my presence of mind now, right? So the libertarian free will believer would say determinism is false, and therefore we have free will. Well, compatibilists will usually go, okay, well, so it's a type of incompatibilism, but it makes absolutely no sense. Obviously, if determinism is false, that should completely erode the notion of personal responsibility. Even for like, it should be out of the question that you have free will. But anyway, I think I got like on a tangent here. What was I trying to say?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just wanted to say that I understand where Jamie's coming from, because he believes that it's the free will belief that is what is backing up the libertarians, the way they blame the poor. And so it goes so well together that it's hard to distinguish.
Certainly. But yeah, but back to my point about I just don't want listeners to get confused with the fact that these two words are the same word. This is
right. And Mitch, your main point was that you tend not to engage like in
right, exactly.
In people that are or maybe are a very small minority, like the libertarians.
Right. So if I'm in a formal debate and it'll be on YouTube and I know it'll reach people, or if I'm just talking to any kind of audience, maybe at a local secular gathering or something, then I will pay very close attention to what the opposition is saying and try to like beat their claims and win the day. But if it's just some guy on Twitter or Facebook, I'm just going to block him. I'm not even going to talk to him. You know, so in terms of this social Darwinism thing, I think most people don't share those views, or at least not to that extreme. Well, so I don't even think it's worth Jamie's time even talking to this guy. Like, this is why it's hard for me to give advice, because it wouldn't even be upsetting me. I'd just be like, oh, this guy's crazy. Block. Goodbye. No interest in talking to him.
Yeah, well, maybe I should do that myself. Maybe I should just block this guy, because he's pure delusional. He thinks like eliminating government's role in things like the environment, healthcare, poverty, and stuff like that. He thinks if we eliminated government in those sort of areas, then all of a sudden we'll have some sort of free paradise. No, that's not how the real world works. When you do that kind of stuff, right, there's more poverty. We see this in India, Africa, China, Philippines, Korea. You know, lots of slums, poor people starving to death, not getting the health treatment that they need, and they can't afford it. Even if they work, they can't make enough money. A lot of these people. You know what I mean? So it's just ridiculous to assume that capitalism is the end-all be-all to our problems. I know George and you are on my side on this, but I'm just saying.
Be honest, if it was up to me, I'll scrap capitalism altogether.
Yeah, and go to a resource-based economy, because this capitalism stuff is the reason why we have so much pollution and whatnot. Wouldn't it be fair to say that unregulated capitalism is the reason why a lot of animal abuse happens, George?
Oh, absolutely, and the money in politics, you know, that's the main thing. So, all right, so let's get a bit philosophical here. So it's not that you're just angry at this person, you know, these people who don't get it, who don't care, but you know, understanding that nobody has a free will. I think you're also angry and frustrated that the world is the way it is, you know, regardless of what's responsible for it. So like in Buddhism, there's this idea that, you know, what causes us suffering, you know, whether it's anger, sadness, fear, whatever, what causes us these unpleasant emotions, these unpleasant state of mind, is that we want reality to be a certain way. We want the world to be a certain way, and we might have every good reason to want these things, but the world isn't that way, or at least it isn't that way yet. So what Buddhist philosophy suggests is a certain non-detachment to work for what we believe is going to help people the most, help animals the most, help the planet the most, but from a standpoint of just doing it stoically, doing it because it's the right thing to do, and just detaching ourselves from being so dissatisfied, you know, with the way things are that it upsets us, that it keeps us upset. You know, could you see yourself kind of like saying, well, you know, like the world is the way it is, but my remaining upset about it isn't going to help me, you know, and I, you know, and so like to just
exactly, it's about help. It's about problem solving. That's the key. If you really care about the issue,
I do care about the issue.
The goal should always be to solve the problem. So once you're confronted with this truth that George is saying, that being crippled by your emotions, by your anger, is not going to solve the problem, then what really is your priority? You know, because then now you're becoming the problem, right? So now it's like so people who are directly doing the problem are not solving the problem. And people who are so angry that they're not helping are contributing as well. You know what I mean? We need problem solvers. That's what we need. That's it.
Yeah, but I just don't want to see decades or centuries even of progress go to waste because people don't see the need for government.
Then do something.
There is a need for government. It's just that we need to fix the one that we got now.
Agreed.
Right, guys, I think we've gotten this. I think, Jamie, the main point is like we're asking a lot of the other side. We're asking them to abandon, again, views that they've held and their parents have held and their grandparents have held. You know, we're asking them to change their whole ideology. And as long as we're asking them, we need to demand something of ourselves also. And for our own, not just because it's right, but for our own benefit. You know, so we can, spend more time while we spend time trying to change their minds because it's the right thing to do. You know, we should spend also some time, working to change ourselves, to overcome the anger, to learn how to communicate in a way that makes us most effective and makes us least burdened by the way things are.
Yeah, and I think Jamie's upset because he wants to change things for the better, but he doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how, and so I can't guarantee that there is a way for him to change people, but that's why my best advice at this time is for him to not be arguing with these idiots online, because all that does is damage his health and ruins his happiness. So until he can find a way to do it without getting all angry and upset and having a heart attack or something like that, it's better to avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, I could show you a screenshot, but I don't really need to because you'll be able to see it on there anyway. If I send you a link, Chandler, you'll be able to read their comments anyway. Like, this one person literally believes we should just get rid of welfare and let charities solve even just, cases of disability or children or the elderly. But I'm thinking that's not good enough because charity has not gotten rid of slums. Charity cannot help all the poor people in need. There's still loads of slums, despite the fact that we've got various charities that are addressing disease, the lack of clean water that, kids get in foreign countries. It's just so wrong, George. I mean, why can't we just give these people a basic income so they can be housed and fed regularly?
Right. Jamie, I just
sustainable.
Recently, after our November election, I became, I pretty much gave up, that half the country, more than half the country, whatever, could vote for Trump, whatever. I just said, it's hopeless and all, right? And I kind of was trying to accept this in the Buddhist way, but over the last several weeks, I've become much more optimistic because I've been doing some reading. And what I would suggest now is we've dealt with this. How about if we end this podcast episode and either that or continue with it? But basically, there's information out there. There are things that are happening in the world that lead me to be hugely optimistic that, fine, the world isn't going to become the way it should be in 5 years or 10 years, but I believe in 20, 30, and 40 years, I believe it's going to exceed our expectations. Are you guys familiar with the kind of information that I'm referring to?
I'm not sure if I follow, but
no, I don't follow that either.
But after seeing the recent stuff that Donald Trump has done, I don't really have much optimistic views about the world at the moment. Because climate change is one of the things that's going to cause some serious problems, as you already know.
Right. Chandler, how about let's end this episode and start a new one on what the next several decades have in store that is cause for optimism.
Huh. Okay, so you want to end this one now?
because it's a much different topic than dealing with this. It's let's turn from like dealing with his anger to actually to sharing this information, because you guys haven't heard a lot of this, and I just began to hear it. Of why things are actually going in a more positive direction that very, very few people know about yet.
Yeah, okay, I suppose we could do that. So I'm not sure, how do we close this episode exactly?
You just close it, and then it will all stay on the line, and you just open the next one.
All right, yeah. So you've been listening to Philosophy, Science, and Religion, and we've been talking about how to engage with people and try to still do our activism and hope to make a better world, but also to avoid getting angry to the point where it's no longer helping us, it's just hurting us. And so we're going to end this one. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's all good.